Hello, everyone. Vincent Price with Price Sample Approval. If you watched my previous video that was on to thee or not to thee, talking about when and when not to use the word thee, you might remember me saying something about passive voice. All of my sentences that I wrote as examples were in passive voice, and I told you that I would talk about passive voice later. Well, guess what? Now it's later. All right, so we're talking about active and passive voice for this particular lesson. This is for non-native speakers and native speakers alike. I teach this for my students, and sometimes they struggle with it. But the thing is, we use a lot of active and we use a lot of passive, and it just depends in our natural speech. It depends on what we're trying to emphasize. So before we get into any grammar, I want you to just watch something. Okay? I do my own stunts. Okay. All right. All right. Done. All right. Why did I do that? Well, I have a purpose. Let's take a look at the board here. I got two sentences. Okay. So, sentence one says, Dr. Price is placing the chair on the desk. Okay. Second one, the chair is being placed on the desk by Dr. Price. If you look back over those two sentences, you'll see that they're about the same thing, but they're written in a slightly different way. Okay, let's actually look at some markers. I get some markers on here and actually identify what's going on. So in the first one, let's start with the verb. Is always a verb, but is what? What's going on? Is placing. That's your verb. Okay. For right now, that's just where we're going to stop. Let's look at that second sentence. So is being placed. That's interesting. We went from two verbs to three. Okay. Um, And our subject. Okay. Who or what is placing? Well, here's our subject, Dr. Price. Okay. And down here, who or what is being placed? Okay, that's the chair. All right. So I'll explain. This sentence is written in active voice. Voice has nothing to do with tense, whether it's past tense, future tense, present tense. It's all dealing with the subject and whether the subject is performing the action or not. Okay? This is active voice. The exact opposite of active voice is passive, and that's what this one is written in. So before you say, what in the world are you talking about? Active and passive voice? Okay, just pump your brakes a little bit. Would you describe yourself as an active person? Me, I would not describe myself as an active person in most respects because I don't do anything. I do like to dance, so I'm active in that sense, but exercise in other ways, go hiking, actually do things, I'm not active. I'm more of just a sit back, chill, passive type of person. Okay. Things happen to me. I'm not necessarily doing them. Okay. So if you're an active person, you're doing something. If a sentence is written in active voice, that subject is doing something. Okay. So who's actually doing the placing? Who's actually placing the chair? Dr. Price, I am. In this sentence, the one that's not active, is this subject doing anything? No. It's not actually doing anything. It's receiving the action. It's not doing the placing. It's being placed. Okay. So that's the difference. It's just sitting there doing nothing, receiving the action. So active voice. You got the subject doing the action. And then down here, for passive, you have the subject receiving the action. So let's go back to my example, my physical example, so you can see the action or lack thereof that's taking place. All right. So let me get into the shot here. Okay, so here's the chair. Here's the chair, and here's Dr. Price. Describe into yourself what I am doing. What did I do? I placed the chair on top of the desk. Okay? Now, I'm going to do the same thing. Now describe what the chair is doing. If you fed into my question, you may have said that the chair is being placed. You look at that verb, that action verb, placed. This chair is not actually doing the placing. It's receiving the action. It's being placed. Okay? That makes it passive. It's not doing anything. Okay? So you have to have action verbs and you have to have transitive verbs, but that goes into a little bit more detail than you need right now. If you are a researcher, especially a scientist, I've seen a lot of incidences with more instances with passive with scientists. You might be more likely to use passive voice and a lot of it. Now, the thing about active and passive voice is that generally you want to strive for using more active than passive. Okay. For active, as you can see, active uses less words. Okay. So this one has 2 verbs. This one has 3 verbs. And then we have the addition of the word by there. Okay. So it makes it a little bit longer by putting in passive voice. Also, it's not direct. So when you're putting in passive voice, you're making things long and you're stretching out what the point is. If you're just trying to emphasize that Dr. Price is actually placing the chair on the desk, we'll just say that. Don't just say the chair is being placed on the desk by Dr. Price. That's being passive aggressive. Passive aggressive. So get to the point. Now, back to what I was saying, for a scientist sometimes, or for research in general, we can say sometimes that the participants were selected or chosen by the PI, principal investigator, I think. I don't really use that term. Okay, so that's our sentence. Let's see what we got. Participants were selected by the PI. What's your verb? You find the action first. So, were selected. Who or what were selected? The participants. So, the participants, that's our subject. So, our question, are the participants doing the selecting or are they being selected? They're being selected. Okay, so this is a passive voice sentence. Your participants aren't doing anything. Okay, they're just like that chair. They're not doing anything. Someone else is doing something. So who's the one that's actually doing it? The PI, the principal investigator. So what I try to do when I edit people's papers is, when I can and when I know who's actually performing the action, I rewrite the sentence in active voice. The lowercase this. I think it's principal investigator. If I'm wrong, I apologize. What did the principal investigator do? Selected. Notice that you will lose one of your verbs. You're going to lose that be verb because there's no point of needing that. So the principal investigator selected the participants or participants. Okay. Whether you actually include the word "the" depends on what your whole structure is. Have you already mentioned participants before? If so, you'll use the "the." If you're just speaking to participants in general, it's your first time, you won't need it. Okay. So the principal investigator selected participants or selected the participants. That's active voice. Here's our subject. Here's our subject performing the action of the verb. The principal investigator is doing the selecting or did the selecting or will be doing the selecting. Okay? Again, active and passive voice have nothing to do with tense. I can say that Dr. Price was placed in the chair. Dr. Price is placing the chair. Dr. Price will be placing the chair. I'm still performing the action, whether that's now, in the past, or in the future. Okay, so you have to think about your verb and your subject and see what the relationship is. So you don't want to have a whole lot of sentences in passive voice. The participants were selected by the PI. The participants were given a survey to complete over the course of 30 minutes. The surveys were then collected by the PI and then assessed by the team of researchers. And then the participants who qualified for the actual test were then notified, blah, 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 blah. You got so much passive stuff going on. The participants were notified, the surveys were collected, were distributed, and all that. If you know who's actually performing the action, rewrite your sentence so that you have that subject performing the action type of sentence, that active voice sentence. Okay? Now, as a small little insight, let's pay attention here. Our subject changes when we shift from active voice to passive voice and vice versa. Okay? So here, our focus is on Dr. Price. Here, our focus is on the chair. So if you're writing and you want to emphasize the thing that's actually receiving the action, then that's a point. That's the time when you definitely use passive voice. If you actually are using that intentionally, okay? Grammar is all about intentionality. Did you mean to do that? Fragments, yes, you can write a fragment in a sentence, but do you mean to write a fragment? Are you doing that on purpose, or you just don't really know what you're doing? Okay, so there's nothing wrong with passive voice sentences if that's what you intend to use them. If you actually intend to use them, because they do change the emphasis, change what you're focused on. Okay, um, so you have to keep that in mind. But if I were you, for the most part, you should have mostly active voice sentences. Okay. If you have any questions for me, if you want me to do a follow-up video for active and passive voice, let me know. Leave a comment, like and subscribe to my to this video, to my YouTube channel. Sorry, um, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. If you type in Price stamp of approval, more than likely you'll find me. And yes, this that is me in the background. So you can't turn back the hands of time. Do your work now. And I'll say that same thing to you. You can't turn back the hands of time. Try writing now. Okay. I'm a procrastinator. I know what I'm talking about. When we actually take time to write, when we do have that time, that writing is going to be much better. Okay. So take time to write. Take time to explore your writing and explore your grammar, explore your vocabulary. If you have any questions, you let me know. Have a fantastic day.